are the armies of the night.
I'd say like some of the first things that I emphasize are correct mentality,
Mm-hmm.
because you can fucking do 1,000 moves, but if you don't have the right mentality, it's just a waste.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Very true.
having a fancy car, but it doesn't run. You know,
No
what
gas in
good
it or
is
something, right?
what good is it, man? You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't work. So I feel kind of like when I started to, I got to go back to when I started actually like teaching, and that was like in 2000, 2003, 2004. At that point, I was dancing for only 5, 6 years, but I was going to school for visual arts, and I noticed that in my city there was no place to get down, and I wasn't allowed to get down. I was literally physically manhandled by security on a number of times just because I wanted to fucking break, or
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of prejudice or
Mm-hmm.
preconceived notion,
Yeah.
or people like perpetuating stereotypes. So like they dress hip hop, but they don't know anything about hip hop, and I didn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to do something about it. So I ended up going to college, my second time, to do community outreach and development. So I learned a lot about power dynamics. I learned a lot about group facilitation. I learned a lot about program development. I learned about international community development. I learned a lot about counseling. I learned a lot about a whole bunch of things that kind of borderline, you know, touch social work,
Mm-hmm.
similar family.
Mm-hmm.
So then I ended up getting an internship with my municipality and started teaching. But when I was teaching, it was based off of a strategic planning model that I created to teach breaking and hip hop. And it was a fucking fat ass document, and I put it in City Hall's table, and I'm like, here it is. And they're just like, damn, all right, well, you're gonna be here for Tuesday and Thursday. I said, okay, so running the programming. And when I started teaching on the Saturdays was the first time I started to implement and share mentality. And firstly, it was really about like, okay, have the correct mentality about what you're doing, and how do you know what is the correct mentality? If it's rooted in the music, if it's rooted in you respecting and preserving the culture, and if it's rooted in you being yourself and telling your story genuine to your experience, then that's a good thing. So I also was hurt for like 9 months. I had a serious surgery, so I couldn't really break when I started teaching. And when I started actually getting down teaching, I was like a beginner again.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start all over again. So that really humbled me out, in that aspect. So all my early first students like Damon and Yumi and Christian and Aaron, together with Willie Ways and Matt Kang and even Rubik's Cube at some point, he would kind of drop in once in a while and they would help me to physically do certain things. But when I was physically able again to dance, I was literally like starting from scratch again. And it was like I then realized the type of dedication, commitment that you have to have in order to exceed and transcend, like whatever I was before. I wanted to like pass that. So when I'm teaching people, it's like I, I try to direct people in terms of having the correct mentality to combine their passion for the dance and the reason why they love dance with their lives in general. So it's kind of like, okay, yes, get good at breaking. Let's hit all the angles. Let's go both ways. Let's pass on everything that I've learned from Bag of Tricks, Boogie Brats, Supernats, everybody, with their blessing, of course. And I'm one of the few people that got blessing from all these guys to share this shit. But I was always like, all right, that's dope. You can break, but what else are you doing? What are you going to school for? What's your career going to be? What are you trying to accomplish in your life? And how can you teach, perform, battle, and be great at all three of those things? That was like the main thing. Of course, my teaching has evolved over the years. Same way I evolve. Like I'm not the same person I was even 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like now when I'm sharing knowledge, it's really for those who they seek me out, and then I share the knowledge that way, as opposed to being the main facilitator in all the community centers and doing all the programs. Like I've kind of moved past that, and I've kind of closed that book like a couple of years ago, and then now I'm more like sharing with people to enrich their experience. But still, one thing that is still in common is like the mentality first, and the connection between mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and how that plays together in the overall experience of contributing to a conversation that's been happening way before you. So the aspect of teaching that I centrally focus on more is how can you gather your life experience and gather your stories in order to tell stories. How do you equip yourself with the right mentality to give you integrity when you're throwing down and battling or in a circle or performing? How can you adequately understand your own aesthetic and do something that's natural to you, at the same time contribute things that people haven't seen before, because to make your contribution relevant. And of course, that with the training regiments and stuff that my crew and I have used in the past, to build your stamina, build your breaking on all the formats to you know be someone that is robust when they're breaking. It can like be flexible to do all kinds of things with an open mind. So that's, I feel like, the main way I've taught and have been teaching more. So
Yeah, like I think that's the kind of thing that's, yeah, again, like really, maybe it's just breaking in particular, because like, I don't know, there's so much, a lot of times there's so much emphasis on just like doing new moves and like
yeah,
moves,
yeah,
and a lot of times that, yeah, like the mentality, or like you said, like bringing the mind, body, soul kind of thing, like even that's just kind of hard to understand for a lot of people, maybe.
right. Yeah,
And
it's true.
so how, because yeah, I think like with a lot of people when they first start, that kind of mentality part is a little harder to understand. It's easier to just kind of like, okay, well, what is the dance and how do you move and do this stuff? And then maybe that
Yeah.
stuff, they kind of get it later. But how do you go about, like, maybe it's like planting that seed from the beginning?
hmm Um, I think the best example is a program that Damon Nomad, like my first real student, um, which he's a special guy. The guy's a fucking renaissance man. Like literally, he's a climber, a musician, an engineer, a dancer, a visual art. Like he does everything. And myself and Damon, we devised a program called Rhythm, and the acronym is Reaching and Helping Youth Through Healthy Active Living in Mississauga. And Rhythm was, and like we didn't get paid for any of that. Like we did everything free, pretty much. We got a minor grant to cover our expenses of travel,
Hmm.
and we taught a lot of these dancers, including Aladdin, like Ali, who you see now.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a baby boy. And we taught for 12 weeks, 2 times a week, for 2 hours each. Actually, closer to 3 hours each. And there was like a session in the middle. So the Tuesday, you would learn theory. So people would come in and I would do a lecture based off of source material. So I'd make them watch the various material that's out there. Freshest Kids, B-Boy Summit 3, interviews with Kenny, with Frosty, everybody, anything I could get my hands on. And we would talk about it. Then on the Wednesday, they would practice. And then on Thursday, we'd come and do more like practical stuff. So we basically build up their foundation from the
Hmm.
bottom up, and emphasize the importance of music and talk a lot about the history, and at the same time like give them the necessary tools for them to create their own selves through the aesthetic of the dance. And that was already very empowering for people. So I utilized my education and I injected it into teaching, like the people. And what I would do that was fairly unique is I would, and this is kind of the basis of my business that I have now, Full Step Saga, was I would cross pollinate the arts in order to get results in a concentrated way with one art. So, I'd say if you want to be an amazing dancer, you got to know what the musician is doing. You got to be able to collaborate with the visual artist and understand what they're doing. And to, not to my surprise, but to my excitement, guys like Mr. Wiggles were already kind of like thinking in this similar manner, So when I met guys like Wiggs or Po One or, Kenny and Maurizio, who these guys I look up to, and of course Deadly Mike, who got his piece in the back there, is like they're already thinking in this mind, and I start to see incredible fucking results, man. Like I start to see people who were so passionate about the dance and could see themselves through it, and were doing it in like a pure way, and it was really good for their lives, and they were excited and happy and fucking growing. And I was like, damn, this is some dope shit. So it was kind of like, the way that I was sharing the knowledge with, support of the crew and contributions, strong contributions from the group itself, from Ground Illusionz crew, and getting support from Mikey or Puzzles and like other guys who I'm very cool with, who I was like, guys, look at these kids that we're building, like come help them out, because they really just have some potential to make it. So I felt very lucky that a lot of my peers were like down to come through and support and help them out and shit, and you know what I mean? So I think it's surrounding them with the right type of mentalities and the right type of energy, and giving them access to resources, not necessarily spoon feeding them, but giving them the availability and making it like an actual, in some sense, formal ordeal. So it's like, if you miss 2 classes out of the thing, you can't keep coming. Fuck, right. It's free. Like, make it fair. So people were like, okay, like they're really about it, and they were willing to take the information because it was like massive amounts of information. Like kids were coming to the class with notebooks and shit, writing like all the time, and that's how I teach my students now. They bring your notebook, you don't have to write, and they'll listen to me speak for like a little bit, and they'll just write a bunch of shit off my mentality, but in order to find their mentality. So it's like, this is the way I think, this is the way I move, this is the way I dance, but you're not going to look like me, completely think like me, or do exactly like me. You're going to do it like you, and that's the point, So I just try to feed that and stay consistent with it, and garner opportunities for people to perform. So I spent a lot of years like working with the city and other organizations to create events for people that weren't competition based. It was very seldom that you saw a jam that I did that was based in the competition. It was always maybe a special guest exhibition, it was workshops, live bands, live art creation, ciphers, live music, all that shit. And it was just to get people to feel the real essence that everyone is complaining is lost. Competition, this competition. I was like, I get it. I know, because we used to win all the competitions. So I don't give a fuck about competitions. I care about people actually growing as motherfucking people, and I know I'm not perfect. So if I can teach somebody to not do the mistakes I did in general, then here, this is like good, so you can do your shit with integrity, and you can live a good life and exist in society, and be a good example for our arts. You be a fucking doctor. You be a B-boy, B-girl doctor. Good. You know what I'm saying? That way people are going to look at us differently. Not look at us like we're fucking dummies or some shit, because we're not,